Hello there! Have you ever wondered what would happen if you mixed God of War with Dark Souls? A studio called MercurySteam has tried to bring this vision into reality with their new action-adventure title. From this video you will realize why I put the emphasis on the word tried, because those two games have become quite legendary and won't be overthrown so easily by a studio responsible for Castlevania series. Welcome to Blades of Fire Credible Review. We begin this adventure as Aaron Delira, Aaron with one A.
You must be Aaron.
Which should make double A Aaron spelled like
Aaron. You done messed up, Aaron!
Aaron is a blacksmith, warrior, and a commoner who has been chosen by the gods, or rather I should say the forgers, to embark on a journey and make his own set of weapons along the way. We quickly get to meet our companion, a scholar teenager who has such a feminine face and a specific haircut that I first thought he was a girl. I'm not even kidding. The world in Blades of Fire seems to be enduring some kind of curse where a lot of steel has been turned into stone by a queen of this land, rendering her opponent's weapons useless. But Aaron is the chosen one. He gets to use one of the sacred hammers that allows him to make special weapons with special steel. There's even a minigame involved in making the weapons, but more of that will be covered in the next categories. I must say that the story isn't the strongest side of this game, unfortunately. There's definitely more action than adventure, and during my 40 to 50 hours of game time there haven't been a lot of cinematics or emotional dialogues. It's all very cautious, generic, and easily forgettable. I mean, it does have some cool ideas, and some of the scenes stood out from the crowd, but it's not enough to judge it positively. In this regard, God of War had a way more impactful story, grasping you by the heart. Atso and Aaron do have some optional interactions, but they're very scarce and uninspiring. They're just there to make their relation feel more alive, but it doesn't even come close to Kratos and Atreus. Notice how similar the concept is between those two titles. A bulky, strong man with scarred hands, skilled in various weapon styles, followed by a teenager who knows how to read runes and cast spells. Don't forget the same chests scattered around the map containing health upgrades. We've all seen it in God of War. This concept worked pretty well, and it's perhaps one of the few reasons I somehow beat this game from start to finish. Oh, and unlike Atreus, Atso only knows how to talk. He won't be providing much of a help in combat. When cinematics do eventually happen, it's most likely a boss introduction or something sinister. As an exception for this rule, there's also a rather funny ogre king who farts enthusiastically in your presence.
Splendid!
And while we're at the stage of visually appealing characters, let's jump into the graphics performance category. The game is run on a custom-made Mercury Engine 6, and I have only one word describing the visuals. They're okay. For today's standards, of course. Aaron's armor and weapons have pretty high resolution, so they're pleasant to look at. Everything else is just okay, for lack of a better term. What is certainly not okay is the regular stuttering, which drove me insane at certain moments. The game freezes for about 5 seconds and then resumes like nothing even happened. Hopefully this matter can be resolved with a simple patch. I had dozens upon dozens of freezes, and it's inappropriate for a game of this sort. The world design is quite interesting. The maps, I'd say, are rather big, they differ quite a lot and feel a little bit like a semi-open world. But when you're finally lost, you realize that the world design is actually quite linear. There are some areas inaccessible to you until you gain a certain rune, which is forcing you to return to this area at the later stage of the game. I personally don't like this mechanic. Similar thing was implemented in God of War with the spear holes. It drags out the gameplay while causing you a massive amount of frustration if you want to explore. I wish I could tell you more regarding the graphics, but there's really nothing else to add. I'd like to remain substantive by not stretching this video with pointless gibberish. It's nothing dreadful, nothing innovative, it's just okay. And the same thing can be said for the soundtrack. It certainly has its moments. There are a few situations where the soundtrack is noticeable, and what I mean by that is when you lose your focus on the combat and start appreciating the music more than the actual gameplay. Of course, it doesn't even come close to a recent Expedition 33 soundtrack. There's no dispute about that. All I can say is just okay. And the last on our table are gameplay and mechanics. Blades of Fire introduces you with rather peculiar fighting system. I played the game on a controller, so I'm not sure how the controls work on a keyboard and mouse, but the thing is, you get to control from which side you want to attack your opponent. The sides being X, Y, B, A on your controller. If you want a stronger attack from the left side, you hold X. If you, after that you want a light attack on the right side, you press B. Parrying and dodging also exist in this game and are vital aspects of your survival during some boss encounters and certain elites. With many weapons to choose from and with many combinations of attack, you get to see plenty of visually pleasant animations and at certain point, decapitations. I must say that with this system the gameplay has proven to be extremely satisfying and has carried this game by a substantial, tremendous amount. Oh, of course I decided to be extremely boring and went with the katana for a vast majority of my playthrough. The weapon blueprints can be acquired by defeating certain amount of enemies which are using the exact weapon that's on a set blueprint. There's no other way to acquire weapons other than forging them yourself. Also, I promised to return to the forge minigame, so let's talk a little bit about that. Throughout your journey you get to loot certain materials which make up the steel bars necessary to make your weapon. There are 3 branches of steel: durability, defense and laceration. You can decide if you want your weapon to be purely offensive and fragile or maybe more durable, or combine both types to make a hybrid of offensive and durable, losing a bit of maximum potential from both types, but still being able to fight with this weapon for a substantial amount of time. You see, the weapons you forge lose durability even if you accidentally hit a wall. Believe me when I tell you that spear in a narrow corridor is a bad idea. Naturally, the blade has its damage threshold, and the more you use the blade, the duller it gets. So there's a sharpening tool that quickly restores the damage and penetration potential, but it costs durability. And when you forge a weapon, you get to see how many points of durability the sharpening will take. If the blade reaches critical amount of durability, it will eventually break, and you need to repair it at the forge, which costs you about 10% of the amount of materials you used for your steel. And the number of repairs the weapon can withstand is determined by the stars you obtain in our already mentioned minigame. This mechanic is pretty straightforward, but requires some thought to master it fully. You need to smash the hammer in a way that the stripes reach the white outline. Pretty simple to understand, harder to master. You have 3 controls to change the width of the strike, the intensity of the strike, and the direction of the strike. Once you've successfully forged your weapon, you get to name your creation in any way you see fit. Sky is the limit. I personally grew fond of my Youngling Slayer 4000 and the biting bobber. I mentioned Dark Souls in the thumbnail and at the start of this video, so let's take a closer look at the topic. The world in which we get to play as Eren has anvils scattered across the maps, and those anvils work exactly like bonfires in Dark Souls and the Sites of Lost Grace in Elden Ring. They work as quick travel points, repair stations and resting places, naturally. How else? Once you rest, your Estus flask refill, but your enemies respawn. And if you die, naturally you have to lose something. So after you respawn and revisit the place of your death, you get back what you have lost, in this case the last weapon you used. And naturally, vast majority of dialogues are happening in real time and can be easily interrupted by walking away from the NPC. Does it ring a bell? I'm glad it does. So now you see why I compared this game to a God of War and Elden Ring. Or Dark Souls. So after pointing this out, I guess we can finally reach the summary. If I were to summarize this game with one word, you'd probably guess what kind of word would it be. I used it plenty of times in this video, and to give you a hint, it's the only word Rammus from League of Legends has in his arsenal. The game doesn't surprise you with anything extraordinary. The gameplay and the exploration is extremely, unbelievably pleasant, but the story is mediocre and exists only to call it an action-adventure game, I guess. Same goes for the characters and their development. I don't regret the money spent for this game, but just after giving Expedition 33 a maximum score, my expectations went rather high, especially when the studio responsible for this game has 250 people on board, which is 8 times more than Sandful Interactive. With all things considered, I'm giving Blades of Fire a 7 out of 10 score for being an okay and pleasant game to chill after a long day of work. It lasts for about 50 hours, doesn't cost much, and the fighting system is definitely something you can love this game for. So don't mind the lower score, as it's only supposed to introduce a comparison and a contrast between games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Witcher 3, which are considered 10 out of 10 games by my own criteria. I'd say that would be everything I have for you today. I bid you a good day and farewell for now.